Did you know that Google Translate has the cool ability to work with languages it doesn't even think it knows? How can Google translate things in languages it shouldn't even be able to understand? Is there a way monolingual English speaker can feel what it's like to read a language like this? Let's talk about this and more in this episode of Linguistic Lichen. As a language lover born in the 21st century, it's hard to believe that only a couple of decades ago, text in languages you didn't know was pretty much undecipherable without the right resources and study, or a real-life person who did know the language. The advent of online translators has brought a new window into the knowledge, culture and literature of billions more people to the fingertips of just about anybody with an internet connection. They're getting better all the time, and although many people rightly warn that they aren't perfect, they're very reliable, at least with regards to getting the general idea of what's going on. I can't find a source for this, but I'd be willing to say that Google Translate will be the most popular of these, at least in the English-speaking world. At time of writing, there were 108 languages listed on Google Translate. However, if you want to translate something that isn't in a language listed on Google Translate, you might still be in luck. Look at these spooky translations. This article about chess in Sicilian or this article about pasta in Kashubian are far from being translated perfectly, but you can kinda get what's going on, and you can also work out what is trying to be said with a bit of effort. I'd take that back, maybe not all at the time, but how can pages in unknown languages be translated into English? The answer lies in the fact that Google Translate is not a dictionary and word reordering machine that some people may think it is. It actually uses neural networks and machine learning, not to translate and rearrange each word, but to pick what is most likely to be the correct translation based on previous data the neural network has already analysed. This means it can still often translate texts that have unexpected spelling or grammar, or are even in a completely different language entirely, provided it is related to the language that Google Translate can work with. This last point explains what is happening when we see these texts in varieties apparently unknown to the translator translated in a way that is clearly better than random, as it is not giving a definitive translation with dictionary and syntax tree by its side. The translator is a lot more flexible with the inputs it can receive. To use the spooky examples we used before, although Kashubian is not on Google Translate, it is actually closely related to Polish, which is, and in turn, Sicilian is closely related to Corsican. Its neural network is smart enough to realise that this is an unknown language. It can also work out that it is similar enough to a language that it does know, so it treats it as that language and hazards a guess anyway. There is obviously a limit to how different a language can be for this technique to work. Unsurprisingly, this excerpt from a Basque Icelandic Pidgin manuscript will not translate well at all if I try to make it take a guess based on the Uzbek study it has done. On the other hand, Kashubian even contains several letters that are not present in Polish, yet our favourite AI linguistic ally still does a decent job guessing what's going on. So, exactly how different can a language be before it becomes untranslatable? Well, it depends on how readable you want your translation to be and how you define different. One way that this cool website I found called elinguistics.net uses is by comparing the similarity in the consonants present in a small sample of very common words to estimate how closely a language is related to another language and also how similar it is. This article is originally in Bavarian, a language that is not on Google Translate, which according to this tool has a genetic proximity of 24.1 with German, a language which very unsurprisingly is. Such a value indicates that these languages are extremely likely to be closely related, so although some of this translation doesn't make much sense to an English speaker, we can still get reasonably acquainted with this fabulous tech-savvy Antarctic friend. On a side note, we can tell it's using its German training to decipher this text because if we copy and paste the original article text into Google Translate, that's what it's auto-detecting it as. Neural networks are designed to work in a similar way to how we think our brains work. So, can we experience what Google Translate feels when we give it a foreign yet somewhat familiar language? You don't need to be a Corsican reading Sicilian to be able to feel this. There are a couple of languages that allow English speakers to also get moderately perplexed. One of these that, whoa, how conveniently, has a Wikipedia with over 56,000 articles is Scots. Scots, which is notably different to and should not be confused with Standard Scottish English or Scottish Gaelic, is a language that is now spoken in Scotland that started taking a different path from what would become modern English in medieval times. Although this is far enough back for it to be noticeably different, it's recent enough for it to still have a good amount of mutual intelligibility. Take, for example, this absolutely outstanding article here. Although, to an English speaker, there are several words here that are pretty foreign, many of them are not too distant from their English counterparts and quite a lot of them are exactly the same. So, if you are proficient in English and another language but not Scots, you might be able to give translating it from Scots to a non-English language a go, but it might turn out a bit like Google Translate's efforts with Kashubian or Sicilian. So, is Google Translate's ability to work with languages it doesn't know really a superpower? Well, maybe not. It's a superpower that all literate people have if there is a suitably similar language to their own, but it's still interesting. Using Google to translate articles from languages it doesn't know can produce some pretty funny results, and I could spend hours at it. But the technology is getting better all the time, so enjoy it while Google Translate is still not yet an all-knowing linguistic oracle, and you still can.